It appears the Steelers tried and failed to bring in Kwon Alexander in free agency, an off-ball linebacker who they did bring into the facility for a visit, but he left the facility without a contract. We'll talk about an update with that situation and what it means for what the Steelers might be trying to do with their final few spots on the roster before OTAs begin. We'll talk about that and the return of Mason Rudolph, all that and more here on the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as Pirates Talk. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We got Ray Fittipaldo and Jason Mackey on again today. It's going to be a fun episode. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. And as always, you can find this show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on your favorite podcasting app, and especially on YouTube. Watch this video on YouTube. If you enjoy it, subscribe to our channel, like this video, and you can get all the different episodes that we do here. But also, there's tons of other content that comes out from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette every day, both at our website, post-gazette.com, and on all our podcasting and YouTube platforms. As I said before, we're joined by Ray Fittipaldo, one of our esteemed Steelers beat writers here. Ray, Kwon Alexander was reportedly brought in by the Steelers Monday evening for a visit. He's an off-ball linebacker. He'll be 29 years old when the season starts. He was once a fourth-round pick for the Buccaneers, who kind of matured into a good linebacker, but then he dealt with several injuries, bounced around from team to team. Then he kind of looked decent again last year with the Jets and is still currently a free agent. But he left Pittsburgh, reportedly without signing a contract. Does that put him completely out of the range of the Steelers signing him now, Ray? Or is this maybe the two sides are mulling over something?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't rule out Kwon Alexander signing at some point. I mean, listen, I think sometimes guys are brought in for visits. They take physicals and, a contract is hammered out. And there are other occasions, like we saw a few weeks ago with Bud Dupree, where maybe a contract is laid out and you cannot come to terms for whatever reason. As we learned with Bud Dupree, he was not looking for a long-term deal that the Steelers offered. The Steelers needed a 2-year deal, and he just wanted a 1-year prove-it deal where he could go back on the market next year. Now, Kwon Alexander is probably in a little bit of a different boat. For the last couple of years, he has been signing these 1-year deals, cheap vet minimum deals. Last year played for the Jets, as you mentioned. I thought he played pretty well too. So, very well might be a situation now where he's looking around and maybe he didn't like the offer the Steelers made. Maybe he's looking for some better offers or some better opportunities for playing time. We don't know that just yet, but you are right. He was in town. A meeting was held, but they did not get a contract done, and we'll see where it goes from here.
We will see where it goes from here. But, Ray, what does this say to you about the Steelers' desires as far as filling out their roster? Is linebacker that important that they go and get a guy in their late 20s he started 12 games last year? Do you think that's going to be the priority with filling one of these last couple of roster spots they have available?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for one reason. We all know they signed Holcomb and Landon Roberts to be the two starters this year, but Holcomb is coming off-season foot surgery, and he's not really going to be involved in OTAs or even minicamp, I don't think. I think their plan is to, get him ready for training camp and, see how he is then. So, for the next 4 weeks, 3 OTAs, 3 weeks worth of OTAs and 1 week of minicamp, you have Landon Roberts, you have Mark Robinson, and you have Tay Crowder. That's it. Now, Tay Crowder played in some games for the Giants last season, but he spent most of last season, the final couple of weeks, on the practice squad of the Steelers. Mark Robinson didn't get a hat until week 15, week 16, where he finally played some defensive snaps. I know they like him, but can you trust him to be the top backup on the inside right now after having 4 games of NFL experience or whatever it is? So I do think, So I do think it's a priority for them. I think they will have another veteran in here, before the season starts. And think there's some guys who are still out there who might be worth investigating.
I agree with that. Let's go over some of the names out here, and this is just a few here who are on the list. But these are guys who I think that age-wise could still be within the range here. Now, Anthony Barr is still available. He's 31, a little bit older there, former first-round pick for the Minnesota Vikings. But other guys I think that could be more in the range of what the Steelers want. Jalen Smith at 28 years old. Granted, he's had a lot of injuries in his career, more than Kwon Alexander. But another guy I think who the Steelers were at one time looking at in the NFL draft many years ago was Rashaan Evans, linebacker, most recently with the Falcons. He was a first-round pick for the Titans years ago when the Steelers were trying to fill the void of Ryan Shazier. And then there's also Zach Cunningham, former Houston Texan, most recently with the Tennessee Titans. He's 28 years old. Are these all reasonable expectations, though, Ray? Or could we be looking at, like, hey, they didn't get their guy at linebacker. Maybe they're going to use this investment somewhere else on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those guys you mentioned, Chris, are guys who were former first-round picks, have made some money in this league, and maybe they just have it in their minds that, hey, I'm not going to sign in May to play for the vet minimum when I know the way this league works and I know that there's going to be injuries and maybe I can get a better deal in July or August. So I think that's part of what's going on here. One guy you did not mention was Kyle Van Noy. I don't think he was a former first-round pick, but he was a mid-round pick and had a very nice career, with the Patriots and I believe with the Lions and most recently with the Chargers. Now he's 32. I think he's going to be 33 years old, but he would be another guy, who might fit. But what it comes down to, Chris, is can you find good veterans who are willing to play on cheap contracts? I mean, that's what it's all about now. We saw this transpire with Mason Rudolph here in the last couple of days. And I know we're going to talk about him next segment, but sometimes guys have to realize what their worth is. And, sometimes the only way you can learn that is free agency. So maybe Rashaan Evans is going through that now. Maybe some of these other guys are going through that now too. But it's a brutal business. A lot of these guys enter free agency thinking they're going to make a lot of coin, and then it doesn't work out that way. So sometimes these guys just have to come to terms of what they're going to play for if they want to continue playing in the NFL.
And another thing about this, too, linebacker is just a different market. Linebacker's not like corner where a bunch of guys are getting signed for tons of money. If you're not a top tier linebacker, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel because people aren't valuing the position. They'll draft the new guy that comes into the league, the young guys that are playing there. But if you're not Roquan Smith or one of those top tier guys, it's tough to get a decent linebacker contract. I think you see the same thing with the safety position in the NFL. Teams aren't valuing certain positions, especially when you're not a top tier athlete coming out of the draft, and there's the potential that you could cost a team decent salaries cap space.
Yeah, I agree. You look at the way free agency has gone the last couple of years, really big contracts for outside corners, even Cam Sutton, who's a good outside corner but has versatility. He got a lot of money. We all know edge rushers command a lot of money. Look what's going on in the interior defensive tackle market, with Quinnen Williams and, Dexter Lawrence now. Those guys are making a ton of money. I know they're staying with their own teams, but, I mean, the market right now is in pass rush and it's in pass coverage. And as you mentioned, if you're an off-the-ball linebacker or if you're a safety, you're kind of out of luck. That's just the way it is right now in the NFL.
I agree. It is that way. But the Steelers did make a signing. Well, reportedly they've agreed to terms with a former Steeler coming back, and it's Mason Rudolph. I want to get Ray's thoughts on Mason Rudolph's return and what it means for the quarterback room moving forward. We'll talk about that and more here on the North Shore Drive podcast. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our great sponsors at GameTime.co, where you can buy tickets for your favorite events and it won't be stressful. Why? Because Game Time is the app you can download right to your phone, and it's going to make it a fast and easy way to buy tickets for your favorite events, whether you're sporting events, music events, comedy, theater, anything near you. There's a big event going on. Game Time is going to help you find the killer deals on last-minute tickets, and they have a best price guarantee that'll knock your socks off. You can also stop stressing over tickets and start getting exciting for the fun that you're about to have at the events, all because of Game Time. Again, download the Game Time app right to your phone, and you can book tickets up to the last minute, even if you didn't plan out far in advance, or you think that tickets are just so expensive. And how do you know that they're the best available? Well, they give you exclusive flash deals on tickets for all sorts of events: football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, anything near you. And they have what's called the game time guarantee. And the game time guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less at the same event, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and create an account. When you create an account, use code PITT and for all capital letters, all one word, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase of $150 or more. Or go to their website, gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account and redeem code PITT, all capital letters, all one word, and you'll get $20 off that first purchase of over $150. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Ray Fittipaldo, continuing our talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it appears that the Steelers are bringing back Mason Rudolph, as you and Brian Batko reported on Tuesday. And Mason Rudolph being back is an interesting proposition here because I think for the Steelers, this is a win because now your third string quarterback won't just have to be a Tanner Morgan or a person that you're taking a wild guess on. You know exactly who your third string quarterback is. And I know some people out there saying, Chris, Ray, who cares about third string quarterbacks? Well, maybe some people should, because there were several times last season where the Steelers were one play away from needing a third string quarterback. And just a few years ago, we saw them need their third string quarterback here. And with Mason Rudolph, this gives you three guys who have all started in your offense, who are all used to your offense now. And I think it just gives you this extra security. And I bet to wager here, Ray, that they didn't have to pay too much to get him. They let him try free agency. He didn't get any big deals there. So now he's coming back to the place that he knows.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be for much more than the vet minimum, Chris. We know what they're paying Mitch Trubisky to be the backup. It's the highest paid backup in the league. And I think you're right. You know, for Mason Rudolph, it makes all the sense in the world to come back here. Free agency didn't work out the way you wanted. So now you come back to a familiar circumstance, a familiar locker room, and you get to stay in the NFL. So, I think it's a win-win for the Steelers. I think right now, with the way mobility is desired by NFL head coaches and offensive coordinators, more and more you need guys deeper on the roster. Look what happened with Kenny Pickett last season. He was concussed twice. Now, I know a lot of that was him trying to make plays out of the pocket, maybe didn't get rid of the ball soon enough. But the fact of the matter is he still was injured twice, and they had to go to Mitch Trubisky late in the season to win a game in Carolina to keep their playoff hopes alive. So I think as long as teams are employing these guys who aren't pocket passers, who are maybe in harm's way more than others, I think it's more important than ever to have quality depth on your quarterback roster. And I think, honestly, the Steelers have that. I think you could argue that Mitch Trubisky is one of the better backups in the NFL. Certainly Mason Rudolph, one of the more experienced third-string quarterbacks. Now, a lot of other teams have better starting quarterbacks, right? And you could probably make an argument that Kenny Pickett is somewhere in that 12 to 15, 17 range of starting quarterbacks in the NFL. But, hey, sometimes depth is important. We'll see how it plays out this year. But I think the Steelers are in a pretty good spot right now with their quarterback room as it is.
Okay, just me thinking outside the box here. We're talking about Mason Rudolph coming back. Is there a chance that Mason Rudolph coming back? We talked about that. You talked about that high cap number for Mitch Trubisky. Is there a chance that with Mason Rudolph coming back that the Steelers might entertain the possibility of flipping Mitch Trubisky to another team to remove that salary cap space if they can get some compensation for it? Considering Mitch Trubisky, he was a high first round draft pick. He won games for the Steelers last year, and Mason Rudolph again has been a backup quarterback for the Steelers who they know they can work with. Or is that kind of just fool's gold? The Steelers wouldn't do that. They're just going to be really happy to stick with their three guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to listen to Omar Khan and take him at his word, Chris. I know you were at the Combine in February. You listened to Omar speak there. You know, he made it clear they want Mitch Trubisky as the backup quarterback, and he said they'd like to do business with Mitch beyond the 2023 season. So, I don't think he would say that and then turn around and cut him or trade him just to save $10 million on the salary cap. So, Mason Rudolph was signed to be the number 3 here. That's the way it is. Mitch Trubisky is entrenched as the number 2. And I think the other stuff, some of the speculation that's out there is just pure, salary cap stuff, people trying to make a talking point. I don't think it's going to happen.
I hear you there. That's why I wanted to ask, because I know that's going to be coming at some point during the long off season of us waiting for training camp. Someone's going to theorize that, and I thought it'd be great to talk about that first with you before it went out there. And I agree with you because, like you said, one, they like Mitch Trubisky, and frankly, they like Mason Rudolph. Like, I know there's some animus in the city against Mason Rudolph, but this was a guy who came in, said nothing. He came behind Ben Roethlisberger, never complained about that. His second year, he got a chance to start, won a few games, literally got knocked out by Earl Thomas, then was clobbered over the head by Myles Garrett with a helmet, and then after that, stayed quiet. When Ben Roethlisberger came back, didn't say nothing, was ready when his number was called upon, when his first year came up where maybe he was going to be the starter, they signed Mitch Trubisky, they draft Kenny Pickett. You don't hear him complain about it. He takes it on the chin. He goes in the training camp, works hard, ends up being the third string quarterback, and he's still ready to go, and he's still helping his team. And we even saw that on the sidelines. Him, Mitch, Kenny Pickett, all three of them were kind of helping each other, being there for each other. He was a good teammate through all of this. I don't think there's any reason to dislike Mason Rudolph, and I think that's another reason why the Steelers are probably happy he's back. I think Mason just wanted to see, could he get a score on the free agency market? He didn't. Let me go back to the people that know me.
I mean, listen, do you blame Mason Rudolph if he wanted to change of scenery after last season?
Not at all.
Right? I mean, listen, I remember the first week or even 2 weeks of camp, he was by far the best quarterback in camp. Mm-hmm. He was out there making plays. And then he really doesn't get a chance to earn the starting job. I think there was some animosity there. And I do think that if another team stepped up and made him a strong offer, he wouldn't be here. But the fact of the matter is, no teams were out there, waving money bags in front of him. No teams apparently thought he was even worthy of being a backup. So he's back here. I think it's good for the Steelers. I think he's a good guy in the locker room. I think a lot of the guys in there like him, and I think he's a good pro and a good teammate. And when it comes to third string quarterbacks, I think that's important.
Same here. I think it helps to have a guy that everyone likes around. Mason Rudolph certainly has been around the organization, all positive things there. I think as far as bringing him back. And now, again, you have a quarterback room that's full of experience. They can all work together. They can all kind of be on the same page. There won't be questions about the pecking order like there was last year. I think everyone will just kind of expect, hey, it's gonna be Kenny, it's gonna be Mitch, it's gonna be Mason, and everyone can kind of just be in their roles, be prepared, and the Steelers come into training camp with a much more level sense of what they expect things to look like. So again, all in all, I think a good situation for both sides there. One, for Mason to keep getting an NFL contract, and two, for the Steelers to get back an experienced veteran quarterback as a third option in case they reach an emergency situation. Ray, thanks so much for talking Steelers with us here on the Wednesday edition of the North Shore Drive podcast. We're going to switch it up and go Pirates in just a second. They had another brutal loss, 4-0 to the Tigers on Tuesday night. We'll get you some thoughts from Jason Mackey, who was there in Detroit before they take on the Tigers for their rematch at 1:10 p.m. Eastern and Wednesday afternoon. All that and more here on the Wednesday morning edition of the North Shore Drive podcast. So stick with us. We'll be right back. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We switch topics from the Steelers to the Pirates. Jason Mackey live in Detroit after another tough 4-0 loss for the Pittsburgh Pirates. They play again on short order. Jason and I are recording this 10:30 p.m. Eastern here on Tuesday night. They play again 1:10 p.m. Eastern Wednesday. So, Jason, you're going to have a quick turnaround for a game here, and the Pirates are going to need a quick turnaround if they want to avoid getting swept.
Yeah, and not an easy turnaround either, Chris. That's the tough part. I mean, if there was a game in this two-game series you'd want to get, it was tonight. They didn't come close to getting it. Eduardo Rodriguez, I think we talked about him the other day. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's just absolutely ridiculous. He's given up one earned run in his past 5 starts. It's a very tall task. Now, baseball's weird. So who knows? I mean, the Pirates offense can't do anything right these days, and Eduardo Rodriguez can't give up, isn't giving up any runs. So of course they'll hang 10 on him. Who the heck knows? But right now, based on what I saw tonight, I mean, that was as feeble as a performance with this team as I've seen, and I've seen some bad ones. There was just no chance of them getting a hit. Michael Lorenzen had their number, had them caught in between. We're asking post-game, Derek Shelton, like, what do you do? I have certain opinions on that. We can go various directions, but I mean, I know this, Chris, they need to do something. What is currently happening cannot continue. They have to fix this.
They need some sort of help. And honestly, it's they're not getting help, especially from the guys that were brought in to be more reliable. Brian Reynolds came in, went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts at the second spot in the order. Andrew McCutchen did have a hit, but also a strikeout, only hit one of 4. Nobody had multiple hits. They come out here with just 5 hits and 31 at-bats. It's just, I know it's starting to sound like a broken record, but they've got to wake up from whatever hitting slump that they're in, and they need some sort of spark somewhere. And I know that, O'Neal Cruz being gone, very real problem here, but there's got to be something that they can lock in. Have you been able to identify in the biggest factor that's leading to these problems at the plate?
I mean, a whole ton of stuff, man. It's hard to isolate on one thing. I mean, but I'll try to answer the question in a sensible way. Sure, they're striking out too much for what they are. Like, they're a contact on-base team. Over the past 14 games, I believe I looked up, they have 140 strikeouts, third most in Major League Baseball. That can't happen. I mean, that just can't. You can't. You need to get on base more. You need to make more contact. Hitting with runners on base, that wasn't a problem tonight because they didn't get anybody on base. But I don't understand a lot of what they're doing with their lineup. Like, look at the middle infield right now. You've got Chris Owings, Rodolfo Castro, G1 Bay, and I'm missing a guy, Tucupita Marcano. And you're basically rotating on either side of the bag every night, playing matchups. You're not allowing anybody to get comfortable. I understand from Derek Shelton's standpoint why he does it. Like, nobody sort of set down roots and said, I'm going to take over this position. But the effect of it is just guys can't really get in there. And, another thing tonight, to sort of wrap up this point anyway, Michael Lorenzen, he's been a reverse split guy so far. So like, left-handers have not fared well at all. The Pirates love, staying opposite sides, right? He throws right-handed, so they want left-handed hitters in the game, and they loaded up with them, and they didn't do anything. Like, you have Connor Joe on the bench, you have Rodolfo Castro on the bench. I don't understand that. I just don't. Like, play your best hitters, play the hitters that make sense. So that's a long-winded way of saying there's a lot of stuff with this offense, Chris, I don't like and understand right now.
You and I have been very patient with Derek Shelton with, struggles, being he coming into a new situation and figuring things out. How much of this is falling on his shoulders right now with not making adjustments like the one you just talked about? Yeah, I mean,
that right there is on Shelton. He constructs the lineup. He's the one that's going to take, I want this matchup, and, I'm going to prefer to go, basically here you're going left on right, as opposed to going right on right against a reverse split guy or whatever. Like, that's Shelton's call, and it didn't work out for him. But is it his fault that certain guys are underperforming? I don't know. I mean, they're professional baseball players. I don't even like the idea of blaming Andy Haynes. And I hear a lot of that, the Pirates hitting coach. Fire Andy Haynes. It's Andy Haynes' fault. Really? I mean, because like 3 weeks ago, he was getting praised for this offense being really good. Like, let's hold the players accountable. If we're going to get mad at anything, they need to produce. And a lot of these guys are paid to produce, and they're not producing, and they should be criticized for it. Like, I'm very much in the favor of, like, being fair to these guys and treating them like human beings, and don't be a jerk in your coverage. But, like, if you're not producing, it's my job to point out that you're not producing. It's fans' jobs to have an opinion on a guy that's not producing. If you're not happy with it and he's making $8 million or whatever, that's fine. Like, I don't blame you. He should be producing. But anyway, that's just my sermon on, guys that are getting paid money to provide offense should be providing offense, and they're not getting enough of it right now from key sources.
No, I hear you on that. Let's talk about some pitching coming up. You got Rich Hill back on the mound. He's 3-3 on the season against Rodriguez, like you mentioned here. What does Rich have to do Wednesday afternoon to kind of get things back in order and maybe be the first pitcher not named Mitch Keller to get a win for the Pirates in a long time?
I know. I don't like their chances if they only win every one of Mitch's starts. So what the message with Rich, or the idea with Rich, is it's to not leave his stuff atop the zone. He gets in trouble when he hangs his stuff. Obviously the velocity doesn't matter, but it's all about location, sequencing, that sort of thing. He knows how to pitch. He knows what he's doing. He's gotten into trouble this season, though, when he's hung curveballs, when he's left fastballs up, sweepers up. I mean, as long as he's keeping the ball down in the zone, keeping it away, staying out of the middle of the plate, he's been very good. I do worry a little bit, though, Chris. This Tigers lineup is very good. You saw it tonight. Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson. They've got some good young players, and they're playing well right now. So not an easy task for Mr. Hill by any stretch.
Doesn't look like it right now because the Tigers played well. They played well Tuesday night, and they're with a quick turnaround Wednesday morning before the Pirates come back, and they play some teams with some pretty good records, the Diamondbacks and the Rangers back at home. We'll see if all that happens here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Jason Mackey, as always, will keep you up to date. He's on the road in Detroit. Jason, thanks so much for keeping us up to date with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Catch all of his work at post-gazette.com, just like you catch all of our work there, and catch all of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as all of the content that comes out, whether it's video on YouTube or audio on all our podcasting apps, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We got daily content the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast. I'll be back Friday, probably with Jason wrapping up the week to talking baseball, and Brian Batko getting us ready for Steelers OTAs, which are right around the corner. All that and more here from the Post-Gazette. Thanks again for checking out the North Shore Drive podcast. We'll see you Friday.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down below in the description.